The first sign was not an empty river. It was a change in the kind of fish coming out of it. For years, monitoring crews on the Illinois waterway had watched silver carp and bighead carp push north through a connected system leading toward Lake Michigan. Their nets, electrofishing surveys, acoustic receivers, and commercial harvest records all describe the same threat. Enormous populations below, fewer fish near the leading edge, and constant pressure toward the Great Lakes. Then, the official reports began recording something different. The invasion front stopped advancing. In the upper pools closest to Lake Michigan, invasive carp abundance declined after years of management and control. The fish were not disappearing from American rivers. Far downstream, millions of pounds were still being removed, and dense populations remained established across parts of the Mississippi, Illinois, Missouri, and Ohio river basins. But near the edge that mattered most, the numbers had moved in the direction managers had spent years trying to force. The obvious explanation was human effort. Commercial crews were removing adults. Electric barriers guarded the Chicago waterway. Agencies tracked movement and attacked local concentrations. Engineers prepared a new defensive system at Brandon Road, Lock and Dam. Yet another mechanism had been operating below the surface, at a life stage most people never see. When researchers opened the stomachs of native predatory fish after an enormous carp spawning event, they found juvenile silver and bighead carp inside species after species. Short-nosed gar ate them, white bass ate them, black and white crappie ate them, largemouth and smallmouth bass ate them, channel and flathead catfish ate them, yellow bass, yellow perch, and freshwater drum ate them. The unexpected predator was not one giant prehistoric fish returning to save the river. It was the river's native predator community. And the discovery changed the question from whether one animal could destroy an invasion to whether an entire food web, protected and combined with aggressive human removal, could attack the invasion at the only moment when the carp were small enough to lose. The term Asian carp once grouped several different imported species together. Agencies now increasingly use invasive carp because the older label can stigmatize people and does not describe one biological unit. The 4 species of greatest concern in the United States are silver carp, bighead carp, grass carp, and black carp. The Illinois River story centers mainly on silver and bighead carp, collectively called big-headed carps. They evolved in the large rivers of Eastern Asia. Silver and bighead carp are filter feeders. Rather than chasing other fish, they strained microscopic organisms and suspended material from the water. Bighead carp feed heavily on zooplankton, while silver carp consume large amounts of phytoplankton and small zooplankton. Both can grow rapidly under favorable conditions. They were brought to the United States during the 20th century, especially in the 1970s and 1980s, for aquaculture and water treatment uses. Managers hoped the fish would remove algae, plankton, and organic material from ponds and wastewater facilities. The idea worked only while the fish stayed contained. Flooding, accidental escapes, and movement from aquaculture allowed them to enter the Mississippi River drainage. Once inside a connected river network, they spread through channels built by geology and modified by humans, while silver carp consume large amounts of phytoplankton and small zooplankton. Both can grow rapidly under favorable conditions. They were brought to the United States during the 20th century, especially in the 1970s and 1980s, for aquaculture and water treatment uses. Managers hoped the fish would remove algae, plankton, and organic material from ponds and wastewater facilities. The idea worked only while the fish stayed contained. Flooding, accidental escapes, and movement from aquaculture allowed them to enter the Mississippi River drainage. Once inside a connected river network, they spread through channels built by geology and modified by humans. The Illinois waterway gave them a route toward the Great Lakes. A silver carp can become famous for one dramatic behavior. When disturbed by boat motors, groups may leap from the water. Large fish have struck boaters, damaged equipment, and turned travel through heavily invaded reaches into a physical hazard. The ecological danger is quieter. Big-headed carps consume food at the base of the aquatic web. Native larval fish, paddlefish, gizzard shad, bigmouth buffalo, mussels, and other organisms depend directly or indirectly on plankton. When invasive carp reach high densities, they can alter plankton communities and compete with native filter feeders. They also convert microscopic production into enormous carp biomass. In heavily invaded stretches, the river can contain astonishing numbers of large fish that few native predators can swallow. This is the central advantage of the invasion. The carp do not need to defeat every predator throughout life. They need to grow beyond the predator's mouth. A newly hatched carp is almost defenseless. An adult is a moving wall of muscle. That transformation can happen quickly. The references sent for this story describe Asian carp making up 90% of fish biomass, permanently muddying rivers by rooting in sediment, and directly destroying plant beds. Those claims combine different carp species and processes. Silver and bighead carp are open water filter feeders, not the bottom-rooting common carp often blamed for uprooting vegetation and increasing turbidity. Big-headed carps can alter food webs and water conditions indirectly, but they should not be described as giant schools constantly digging through the riverbed. The distinction matters because controlling the wrong behavior leads to the wrong solution. Their reproductive biology is also more complicated than the idea that every female releases 1 million eggs and instantly replaces any fish removed. Females can produce huge numbers of eggs, but eggs and larvae require suitable flow, temperature, turbulence, nursery habitat, and hydrological timing. Many spawning attempts fail. Strong year classes can be separated by weak recruitment years. In a river, abundance depends not only on how many eggs are produced, but on how many young survive long enough to join the adult population. This stage is called recruitment. It became the hidden center of the predator story. During the summer of 2014, big-headed carps produced a large year class in the Lagrange reach of the Illinois River. Suddenly, young carp less than 100 millimeters long were available across the same shallow and connected habitats used by native predators. Researchers sampled 1,172 predatory fish from August through early November. They examined stomach contents and compared what predators ate with the small fish available in the environment. Juvenile big-headed carp represented about 9% of available small fish prey, yet the young invaders appeared in the diets of an unexpectedly broad group. In 11 predator species, juvenile big-headed carp occurred in more than 15% of examined stomachs containing prey. Whitebass, black crappie, and short-nosed gar continued consuming them even as the juveniles became less available, suggesting active selection rather than accidental feeding. The result overturned one part of the invasion story. The carp were not completely free from native predators. American river fish recognized them as food. Some appeared to prefer them. That does not mean the predators could erase an established population. The researchers studied one major recruitment event during one season in one reach. Stomach contents prove consumption, not system-wide control. Predators may eat many juvenile carp while millions survive. Rapid growth soon carries the survivors beyond the gape of most fish. But predation at recruitment can matter disproportionately. Every juvenile consumed is one fish that never reaches adulthood, never filters plankton for years, never moves toward the invasion front, and never reproduces. If predators repeatedly remove a large share during the brief vulnerable window, they can reduce the strength of future year classes. The important predator may therefore be smaller than the invasion's largest adults. A whitebass does not need to swallow a 50-pound bighead carp. It needs to eat the carp when it is 5 centimeters long. This is where the viral alligator gar story becomes both attractive and misleading. Alligator gar are extraordinary native fish. They belong to an ancient lineage, breathe air when oxygen in the water is low, possess armor-like gonoid scales, and can grow larger than any other fish native to Illinois. Their historical range included parts of the Mississippi Basin before dams. Habitat change, harvest, and deliberate persecution eliminated them from many northern waters. Illinois began reintroduction efforts to restore native species, not to launch a secret carp control program. From 2010 through 2013, approximately 6,000 alligator gar were stocked, but only about 1,500 were released at sizes considered large enough to avoid immediate predation and improve survival. That number was tiny compared with invasive carp measured in tons per river mile. Illinois fisheries officials explicitly warned that alligator gar would never occur at densities capable of suppressing the carp population alone. Even large gar generally prefer prey far smaller than the enormous adult carp imagined in dramatic videos. Young invasive carp may be vulnerable for a limited period, but they grow quickly beyond the most likely prey size. The claim that alligator gar caused a documented Illinois river carp collapse is not supported by published monitoring. The fictional clue about enormous tracks on a muddy bank fails for an even simpler reason. A gyar is a fish. It has no feet. Alligator gar restoration remains valuable. Returning an extirpated native predator can restore biodiversity, create a trophy fishery, and add another consumer of appropriately sized invasive carp. But presenting it as the animal secretly reversing the invasion turns conservation hope into unsupported certainty. The real gar identified in the 2014 diet study was short-nosed gar, a smaller native species already present in the Illinois River, and there was only one predator among 11. That is scientifically more interesting than one monster. It means ecological resistance can be distributed across a community. Whitebass may hunt schooling juveniles in open water. Crappies and largemouth bass work backwaters in cover. Catfish feed along the bottom and through low light periods. Short-nosed gar attack near the surface and in slow habitats. Freshwater drum and yellow perch add pressure in other zones. No single species patrols the entire river. Together they overlap in space and time. The invasion's vulnerable stage passes through that overlapping net. Predator diversity can make an ecosystem harder to invade because one prey species cannot escape by changing only one behavior or habitat. If it moves shallow, one predator waits. If it moves open, another hunts. If it feeds at night or near the bottom, another species may encounter it. This is a hypothesis for management, not a guarantee. Native predators can also suffer when invasive carp alter plankton and forage communities. Young carp can become abundant food during a strong year, But unpredictable recruitment means predators cannot depend on them permanently. Restoring one predator without restoring floodplain habitat may accomplish little. The correct lesson is not to stock alligator gar everywhere. It is to protect the native food web already eating the invader. That means maintaining backwaters, side channels, floodplain lakes, vegetation, water quality, spawning habitat, and connectivity where native predators reproduce. It means avoiding indiscriminate control methods that harm the same fish, providing biological resistance. It means managing predator populations as part of invasive species strategy without expecting them to replace direct removal, because human removal remains the clearest documented force behind declines near the invasion front. Since 2010, agencies working through the Illinois Waterway Monitoring and Response Program have used contracted commercial fishing, intensive removal events, telemetry, electrofishing, nets, hydroacoustics, and barriers to stop the population moving toward Lake Michigan. The strategy separates the river into zones. Farther downstream, where invasive carp are abundant and all life stages occur, commercial fishers remove enormous biomass. In the upper waterway, where populations are lower, crews target individual fish and concentrations to reduce pressure against the barriers. The 2024 federal action plan supported removing approximately 6 million pounds from established lower Illinois river pools and at least 1 million pounds from the upper waterway. Those numbers reveal why the fish are not simply disappearing. Managers are taking millions of pounds because millions remain. The removal works by changing population pressure. Every adult taken below the leading edge is one less fish capable of moving north. Removing mature females also reduces reproductive potential. Concentrating effort in source populations may produce benefits upstream because the Illinois River functions as a connected metapopulation rather than isolated ponds. Models published by government scientists and collaborators show that increased harvest in lower river populations can reduce abundance and movement toward the invasion front. The best allocation depends on fish movement, reproduction, mortality, habitat, and cost. No one program solves the equation. The electric dispersal barrier system in the Chicago Sanitary and Ship Canal adds another layer. It creates electrical fields intended to discourage or stop fish movement through the canal. Monitoring above and below the barriers searches for adults, juveniles, eggs, larvae, and environmental DNA. Only a very small number of bighead or silver carp have been captured above the electric barriers, and no reproducing population has been established in Lake Michigan. The leading edge remains around River Mile 281 in the Dresden Island Pool, approximately 55 miles from Lake Michigan. The 2026 monitoring plan reports that the populations have not advanced farther upstream and have declined in abundance near the edges of the invasion fronts since management began. That sentence is the real foundation for the title, not disappearing across the United States, declining near managed invasion fronts. The difference protects the story from becoming propaganda. A localized decline can still be an enormous achievement. In an open river connected to heavily invaded source populations, holding the front in place for years requires constant work. Fish move through locks, around structures during floods, and between habitats managers cannot sample perfectly. Success is not an empty river, it is a front that does not advance. The next defensive layer is the Brandon Road Interbasin Project near Joliet. The site is a critical pinch point on the pathway toward Lake Michigan. Plans combine technologies rather than betting everything on one barrier: an engineered channel, acoustic deterrents, an air bubble curtain, an electric barrier, and a flushing lock intended to reduce fish movement. The estimated cost grew beyond $1 billion as the design advanced. Construction began in stages, and federal announcements in 2026 confirmed continued work on the next phase. The project exists because biological control alone is not enough. Native predators cannot guarantee that no carp reaches Lake Michigan. Commercial harvest cannot catch every fish. Electric barriers can be affected by maintenance, barges, water conditions, and rare passage events. A layered defense accepts that each method can fail and makes the next method wait behind it. This is integrated pest management at river scale. Harvest attacks adults, native predators attack juveniles. Barriers attack movement. Monitoring attacks uncertainty. Habitat restoration strengthens the species capable of resisting recruitment. The references reverse this relationship by claiming a biodiversity program accidentally caused the measured carp declines, while removal and barriers failed. Available evidence does not support that storyline. Current federal plans continue treating harvest and deterrence as central because population models, monitoring, and removals show they matter. Natural mortality, movement, and recruitment also matter, but agencies are still developing age-structured models to separate their contributions. That uncertainty is not weakness. It is the honest state of a moving ecological system. Fish abundance can decline in one pool because adults were harvested, because fish moved elsewhere, because a year class failed, because predators consumed juveniles, because floods did not create suitable spawning conditions, or because several factors aligned. Net catches alone cannot distinguish every mechanism. Hydroacoustics estimate fish density without requiring capture. Telemetry follows tagged individuals. Otoliths reveal age. Larval sampling measures reproduction. Stomach analysis reveals predation. Environmental DNA helps detect presence, but does not always translate cleanly into abundance because flow, temperature, shedding, and degradation affect the signal. The viral second reference invents a clean eDNA reversal in which GAR DNA rose exactly as Carp DNA fell, followed by vegetation and native fish recovery. No official study located for this script supports that chain. There may eventually be such a trophic response. It should not be announced before the data exist. There is another ecological correction. Silver and bighead carp remove plankton, but they can also become prey and transfer energy upward. The 2014 study suggested native predators may partly mitigate negative effects by eating juvenile carp. This does not transform the invaders into a benefit. It shows food webs adapt. A river is not frozen at the moment of invasion. Native species learn, shift diets, move, and sometimes exploit the newcomer. That process can take years. Predators may initially fail to recognize unfamiliar prey. Juvenile silver carp in laboratory work showed no innate avoidance response to several native predators, potentially making them especially vulnerable. A prey species that does not recognize danger can feed a predator efficiently, but survivors reproduce. Behavior can change. Ecosystems continue evolving after the first dramatic headlines fade. The most useful management question is how to strengthen that adaptation. Could protected predator populations reduce carp recruitment enough that commercial harvest becomes more effective? Could restored backwaters concentrate juvenile carp where predators encounter them? Could removal target adults before strong spawning years while native predators suppress the surviving young? Could models identify places where habitat restoration and harvest reinforce each other? These questions are more valuable than asking whether alligator gar will save the Great Lakes. They turn a miracle story into a testable strategy. They also prevent a dangerous mistake, moving large predators outside their native ranges. Biological control introductions have repeatedly produced new invasions. Alligator gar should be restored only within appropriate historical habitat under professional management, with genetics, prey communities, human safety, and ecosystem effects considered. The cure for one invasive fish cannot be another careless introduction. Native does not automatically mean harmless in every water body. Scale matters. The title's word predator can finally be understood in two ways. One predator is biological, the collection of native fishes consuming juvenile carp during a narrow window. The other is human, coordinated commercial fishers, removing millions of pounds of adults. Neither can win alone. The river's current condition emerged from both. The carp are not gone. Their established range remains vast. Grass carp reproduce in parts of the Great Lakes Basin. Black carp threaten native mussels farther south, and silver and bighead carp remain a major threat in connected rivers. The Great Lakes are not safe enough to declare victory. Yet the invasion has not followed the unstoppable path once feared. Near Lake Michigan, the leading edge has remained in place. Abundance near that edge has declined under sustained management. Native predators have demonstrated that juvenile carp are not ecologically invisible. The invasion has a vulnerable stage. That may be the most important discovery. An adult silver carp exploding from the water looks unstoppable. It is fast, heavy, and capable of producing an enormous number of eggs. But every one of those adults once drifted as an egg, swam as a larva, and entered a small fish community where a crappie, bass, catfish, drum perch, or gar could swallow it in a second. The entire invasion passes through a body small enough to disappear inside a native predator. Management cannot control the weather that creates a strong year class. It can influence what waits for that year's class. A healthy predator community does not replace barriers, harvest, or engineering. It makes those expensive tools attack a population already losing recruits. Harvest removes the adults that survived. Barriers contain the movement of those left. Monitoring reveals where the pressure is changing. This is not the story of nature fixing a human mistake without help. Humans damaged native predator populations, altered rivers, imported carp, connected basins, and then spent decades trying to manage the consequences. Humans also funded monitoring, removed millions of fish, restored habitat, protected native species, and built defenses. The river did not solve the invasion for us. It showed where help could work. The references begin with a fisherman declaring that the carp are gone. The scientifically accurate ending is harder and stronger. They are not gone. They have been stopped near one critical front by years of coordinated pressure. While native predators quietly consume the next generation below, the real predator was unexpected because everyone was looking for one enormous animal. What scientists found was a community. 11 native species had turned the invader into prey. Not enough to erase it, enough to expose its weakness. And in a river where victory may mean preventing one more mile of movement, that weakness could be the difference between an invasion that reaches the Great Lakes and one that finally meets a boundary it cannot cross. The boundary will not hold itself. Commercial contracts must continue. monitoring equipment must be maintained, and agencies must respond when fish appear in unexpected locations. Predator populations require clean water and connected habitat. Brandon Road must move from plans into working infrastructure. Every layer depends on funding and cooperation across state and federal lines. That is why dramatic claims can be harmful even when they sound hopeful. Saying alligator gar already reversed the invasion could persuade people that expensive management is no longer necessary. Saying every barrier failed ignores the fact that no reproducing silver or bighead carp population has established in Lake Michigan. Saying the fish are disappearing hides the enormous populations still supporting removal programs downstream. Hope becomes useful only when it is accurate. The verified evidence offers real hope. Sustained management can reduce abundance near an invasion front. Native predators can consume large numbers of juvenile carp during strong recruitment events. A diversified strategy can exploit adult movement, reproduction, and early survival at the same time. The river's response is therefore neither miracle nor failure. It is leverage. For years, managers attacked what they could see: adult fish jumping beside boats and filling commercial nets. The stomach study revealed another battlefield measured in centimeters rather than pounds. Juvenile carp existed briefly inside the ordinary menu of native fishes. That stage can be targeted indirectly by conserving predators and habitat. Future experiments could quantify how many juveniles predators remove, whether predation changes adult abundance years later, and which habitats produce the strongest overlap. Researchers could compare reaches with similar spawning conditions, but different predator communities. Bioenergetic models could estimate consumption from predator abundance, temperature, growth, and diet. Until those tests are completed, native predation should be described as a potentially important recruitment control, not the proven cause of every decline. That careful wording does not weaken the documentary. It creates real suspense. Scientists know the carp can be eaten. They know the front has declined. They do not yet know how much of one result explains the other. The next years of monitoring will determine whether the river's predators are background actors or control force managers can deliberately strengthen. Either answer will matter. If their contribution is small, agencies can focus resources on harvest and barriers without waiting for a biological rescue. If it is substantial, predator and habitat conservation could become a formal part of invasive carp strategy across the native range. The discovery has already corrected one assumption. Invaders did not enter an ecosystem incapable of recognizing them forever. The river learned to eat them. The deeper lesson reaches beyond carp. Invasive species often succeed because ecosystems have been simplified before the newcomer arrives. Rivers lose floodplains, predators, seasonal connections, and habitat complexity. The invader then encounters fewer checks than it would inside a functioning community. Restoration cannot return the past exactly. Dams remain, cities depend on canals, agriculture changes runoff, and commercial navigation requires open routes. But managers can rebuild pieces of ecological resistance. Protecting native predators, reconnecting suitable backwaters, improving water quality, and maintaining seasonal habitat can make each reproductive event less predictable for the invader. This is not romantic faith in nature. It is a risk reduction. A diverse river contains more ways for an invasive population to fail. Eggs can be lost to unsuitable flow. Larvae can miss nursery habitat. Juveniles can be eaten. Adults can be harvested. Migrants can meet barriers. Each pressure may be insufficient alone, but together they reduce the probability that every stage succeeds. That is the same logic engineers use at Brandon Road. No single deterrent is trusted completely. Sound, bubbles, electricity, flushing, monitoring, and removal are layered because failure at one stage should meet resistance at the next. The predator study adds biology to that layered defense. It says the smallest carp are already passing through a natural checkpoint. The challenge is measuring how strong that checkpoint can become without damaging native communities or inventing another uncontrolled intervention. The answer may differ from river to river. A predator abundant in Illinois may be rare elsewhere. Flood timing, temperature, prey alternatives, and habitat shape every interaction. Management must follow local evidence rather than copy one dramatic success story across the continent. They see food. Human crews then remove the survivors, barriers confront the migrants, and monitoring measures what remains. The discovery is not a miracle predator. It is a sequence of pressures, each waiting at a different stage, turning one invasion from an inevitable advance into a fight that can still be influenced today.